Honestly, Nick, I have to sort of swim out to the wave and say, I don't know, it was a child's voice. It was very pure, very white.
Why did Julie Andrews stay silent for nearly 90 years? And what made her, the woman who always upheld a spotless, gentle image, finally decide to tell it all today? What you're about to hear has never appeared in any newspaper, never been told on any stage. This is not a story for pity, but for truth. But before we name those who hurt her, let's step back for a moment, to understand why Julie Andrews was once called an angel by the whole world, and why her silence hurts so deeply. Don't forget to subscribe to hear the full truth.
Very little, to be honest with you, very little, and I wouldn't call it a pure voice by any means.
Julie Andrews was born on October 1, 1935, in Walton-on-Thames, England. Her real name was Julia Elizabeth Wells, but from the moment she first sang, she became Julie Andrews, the voice of the 20th century. Not through ambition, but through a gifted talent, a crystal-clear, 3-octave soprano. At 13, she was the youngest performer ever to sing before the British royal family. At 18, she conquered Broadway. And at 28, she won an Oscar for Mary Poppins, her film debut, a rare feat in cinema history. A year later, The Sound of Music made her a global icon with the timeless line, "The hills are alive," a moment that silenced the world. Throughout her career, she earned an Oscar, 5 Golden Globes, 2 Emmys, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and the title of Dame from the Queen of England. But what people loved most about Julie wasn't the awards, but her grace, humility, and elegance in a dazzling world. She once sang to overcome fear, laughed to hide pain, and felt most alone when the lights went out. In 1997, after a life-altering surgery, her 3-octave voice was lost, forever. Julie never blamed anyone. She quietly stepped back, as if the world no longer needed an angel who couldn't sing. But today, at 89, she is no longer silent. Not to seek pity, but to name those who silenced that angel for a lifetime. Because the spotlight never comes from fairy tales, it's traded for scars no light can erase. And Julie's first scar came from the very man she once called father. The first man to shatter Julie Andrews' innocence was the very one she once called father. His name was Ted Andrews, her stepfather, a performer, and the man who discovered her angelic voice. He took Julie on stage from the age of 8, dressed her in a princess gown, and made her smile for the audience. But when the stage lights went out, the nightmare began. In her memoir Home, Julie wrote a single line that left the world in silence: "I pretended to be asleep, frozen with fear. I never forgave him." That sentence, needing no further explanation, became one of the most chilling accusations ever spoken. Ted didn't just steal her childhood, he planted a fear in her soul that lasted nearly a century. And what's even more painful, she chose silence. Not out of weakness, but because no one wanted to believe an angel could be hurt like anyone else. Have you ever been hurt by someone close to you? Ever had to fake a smile while wanting to scream inside? Leave a comment, because Julie's story isn't just a star's past, it's the present for millions who've been forced into silence. And if you think this is the peak of her tragedy, the second man about to be named was the one Julie loved most in her life. Don't look away, because love doesn't always save. Sometimes, it slowly destroys from within. If Ted Andrews destroyed Julie Andrews' childhood, then Blake Edwards was the one who broke her heart in adulthood. They were once Hollywood's dream couple, the genius director behind the Pink Panther, and she, the timeless voice. But behind the happy photos was a marriage filled with control, loneliness, and pain. In private journal entries, Julie admitted, "There were days I didn't recognize the man I once loved. And the worst part was, I stayed." Blake suffered from severe depression. He was irritable, controlling every detail of Julie's life. He loved her, but in a suffocating way that made her feel trapped in her own home. Julie, once a lone angelic voice on stage, now had to shrink back whenever he lost his temper. She sacrificed her voice, her time, her fame, all for what she believed was marriage. But what she got in return were lonely nights and the feeling that she no longer knew who she was. Have you ever stayed in a relationship, not out of love, but out of fear? Fear of hurting the other person, fear of being judged, fear that if you walked away, you'd have nothing left? If so, you understand Julie better than anyone. And if even an angel like her could be broken, what else could possibly bring her to her knees? The third name was someone who once promised to restore her spotlight, only to snuff it out without mercy. Don't miss what comes next, it will make you see Hollywood through an entirely different lens. Mike Nichols, the man who once called her the only one, then abandoned her right before the spotlight. Julie once believed Mike Nichols was her savior. After all her losses, she saw in him an artistic ally, a brilliant, sensitive, and powerful director in Hollywood. They dreamed together of a project that would mark her glorious comeback after years away. And he promised, that role was hers, no one else's. But when the cameras rolled, the name called wasn't Julie Andrews. It was Barbra Streisand. The next time, it was Meryl Streep. Julie was never told. No apology. No explanation. Just pushed aside. Quietly. As if she had never been part of the plan. He once said I was the only one who understood the character. But in the end, I was just a placeholder in his world, Julie wrote. The betrayal wasn't about losing a role, it was about losing trust. The trust that someone truly saw her worth, and then crushed it. Nichols didn't just cost her a film. He silenced her for years after, afraid of being deceived again, afraid to hope, afraid to stand under the lights not knowing if she still belonged. Have you ever put your trust in someone, only for them to turn it into a weapon against you? If so, you're hearing your own story. And worse than betrayal, is losing the very thing that defines who you are. That's what happens next, when Julie put her faith in medicine, and lost the angelic voice the world once adored. Don't look away. In 1997, Julie Andrews believed that medical science could help preserve her voice, the legendary, 3-octave miracle, so pure and rare that experts called it inimitable. She agreed to surgery, placing her full trust in one of America's most renowned vocal cord specialists, Dr. Stephen Zeitels. The procedure was promoted as simple, completely safe. But just weeks later, Julie walked into the rehearsal room, and could no longer sing. No pitch. No resonance. No Julie. I opened my mouth, and the sound that came out wasn't mine. It was the sound of loss, she wrote in her memoir, no words of blame, but every sentence soaked in sorrow. Julie sued for medical negligence and received a settlement. But how do you compensate an artist for losing the very reason she exists? How do you measure the worth of a soul stolen by a scalpel? Julie Andrews didn't die. But what made the world love her, did. And the most painful truth was that she had signed the consent herself, believing a human promise. Have you ever traded a piece of yourself for a promise left unkept? Share in the comments, what have you lost that made you feel like you were no longer yourself? We're listening. And don't look away, because the final chapter will be something you never expected. The man who truly broke Julie didn't do it on stage, but in front of millions of television viewers. Hit subscribe, because the last name will leave you angrier than all four combined. At the height of her fame, Julie Andrews collaborated with the BBC on a musical program called A World of Music. The project was led by Richard Costin, a well-known director who once declared in the press that Julie was a fresh breath for British television. But behind the scenes, what she received wasn't support, it was public humiliation. Richard criticized her as too classic, too clean, out of touch, and unilaterally cut the performances she loved, replacing them with trendy acts she never approved. On live air, he even referred to Julie with a mocking tone, she's still trying to adapt to modern television. An angel was shamed, not for failing, but because her purity didn't fit the media's craving for sensation. Julie once said, I don't hate him for the show's failure. I hate that he made me doubt who I really am. There's no wound deeper than being dismissed on the very stage where you were once revered. The story with Costin wasn't just a career setback, it was the first crack that made Julie start censoring herself, questioning the spotlight, and retreating into safe roles. Have you ever lost your confidence because of someone's words? Don't stay silent. Comment below, name the person who made you afraid to be yourself. They may never read it. But I, and thousands who've been hurt, will listen. Julie Andrews didn't name them for revenge. She spoke up to remind herself she survived. If you've ever been betrayed, silenced, or had something precious taken from you, then this story is yours. All her life, Julie Andrews chose gentleness as a way of living, chose the light as her stage, and chose silence, to protect the last beautiful part of herself. But gentleness does not mean weakness. And silence does not mean forgiveness. Today, at age 89, she needs no applause, no one to say, "You're brave." She only needs to speak, to remind herself that a voice can be lost, the spotlight can fade, but the truth can never be taken. Julie Andrews once made the world fall silent with a single high note. But it is now, as she speaks her final truth, that the world truly hears her, as a flesh-and-blood human being, with pain, scars, and unshakable pride. Has someone ever taken away the thing you valued most? Have you ever stayed silent, believing no one wanted to hear you? Don't stay silent any longer. Leave a comment below, tell us your story. Because sometimes, your words might save someone else who's hurting just like you. If you've ever been silent because of pain, leave a comment, and if this story moved you, hit subscribe to help us shine a light on forgotten truths.